So here, like Martyrs, I think I didn't really follow Martyrs too closely. Okay, well let me just like be super clear about it. It's very difficult to remember. The Souls games were very antagonistic when it came to like streamer relations. On top of the fact that, unfortunately, because I was part of Soulbrand at the time, everybody thought that I shared a lot of bad ideas. That was part of why I left. People blamed Soulbrand for a lot of stuff that they didn't like. They thought that Soulbrand had FromSoft's ear for a lot of stuff, which is totally not the case. Between like duelists versus invaders, or like people who don't like how they play, or like for me, it's like I'm like a like the game sets the rules, you just go in and do whatever, but some people don't like that. Some people like even their invasions to be like clean and restricted. There was a lot of, what would you call that, tribalism? I don't know. Certain people I just didn't associate with, or were like worse than just neutral. And I don't remember exactly who was in which list. I know some people, one person I have who's like currently like blocked, who I for the life of me I can't remember what, I can't remember why, but like there are some people who like I had blocked or banned or ignored or whatever because they said things that were super shitty. Like so, like one thing that kind of came up a lot. Some people grew up as well, but one thing that kind of came up a lot is that there was like a lot of very toxic or even flat out racist or whatever people, a lot of homophobic people that were like very active, loud streamers and shit. Digging through my memories to figure out who was or wasn't within the minefield of people who I didn't want to associate with. I can't quite remember every single person and why I didn't talk to them or why I didn't watch the streams much. I believe that I had some interaction with the Martyrs, and I don't think it was a negative thing, but I don't think we really cut. I guess I would imagine we probably didn't gel well enough for me to remember. For Foxio, I think there were some specific things that made me not associate closely, I guess. I don't remember. It might have been one of those things like, you duelist, you know? Because I did that with a lot of people. A lot of people who were like super into duels and nothing else. I was like, nah, I'm going to just slowly back away. Like, I loathe the thought that auto duels was the only way to play the game. And because I was such a dedicated invader, I guess it's not that I immediately took it personally, that like, oh, this person's only into duels, so they must be a bad person. It was more like that a lot of people push duels as the only way to play the game and would try to coerce everyone else into dueling and whatnot, and I did not like that. As far as who was part of that camp, I don't remember really, like, in particular. I know there were, like, I know some people who I do know who were, like, big into duels and nothing else. Some people were very, like, trying to convert, like, some people were coming into the, like very fighting game community types. There were some fighting game community types that were, like, very big into pushing the whole idea of, like, honor duels or bust, and that was gross to me. There's definitely some names that, like, I recognize the name, but I don't remember much about how I interacted with them at all. The funny thing is, the person who I think I probably most, I guess, I'm not even sure if inspired by is the term, but was I believe a regular Forest Invader, was Soul Invader. And in fact, when I invaded Soul Invader at one point, I think I invaded him and just ran up and killed him really quickly. I don't know if there was battling or anything. I just, like, fucking go up in there and kill somebody. I have a clip of me kind of, like, spazzing out, going, oh, it's Soul Invader. But yeah, a lot of animosity, like random animosity, a lot of random, like, very reserved interactions with people back in the day. I think luckily people got over the, like, duels or everything culture. They're not the slice of the game around which the numbers have been balanced, and I don't want to play a limited rule set that is created by people who are not capable of making good balance decisions. A good example, so here's an interesting story. I'll give you a two-parter for this one. Does anybody remember D-Invader? Very, very ruthless invader, ran a lot of very strong builds, did not give a shit. He was, like, more ruthless and scummy than I've ever been in my entire life, as far as evasions were concerned. For the longest time, he did not invade. He did not stream. He streamed, but he was like the earliest streamers who didn't really use a microphone or anything like that. I convinced him to get a microphone, and I think that was his downfall, because damn, dude had a super foul mouth in ways that I think we're gonna get him banned from Twitch. And I think he kind of, like, the moment he got a microphone, I think a lot of people were like, oh geez, okay. I think he was like Dark Moon Blade washing pole, or he had a setup that was interesting because of the unique animation properties, where you would run a Life Hunt Scythe in one hand and the Gargoyle Tail Axe in the other, and I think it was L2, R2 alternating. They swung very, very fast if you alternated, so you'd have a repeating, very wide swing, surprisingly high damage, very good bleed buildup, and the Tail Axe increased your bleed resistance. You could spam that shit and it was really strong. The thing about duels, though, that the Invader did was he tried to host an NPC tournament, an NPC duel tournament, whatever. The problem with that is that a lot of the NPCs are busted and some of them are terrible. Rather than saying, fuck it, so long as it's an NPC, it's good. D-Invader just started banning certain characters. I think you couldn't play Lautrec, you couldn't play Quaylana, and it was just like, it's the perfect example of how just like dueling culture just does not allow for the game to be balanced in a reasonable way that's satisfying, that allows a lot of variety and not just narrow the game down to shit. And yeah, Dark Souls 1 did have a very, very Wild West community. It was a mix of like super toxicity, strong opinions, very stressed out, angry people. That was the height of ending the place that I used to work at a while back, from like 2008 to 2014-ish, and I was getting towards like this sucks, this is really terrible part of it. So like in 2011 it was okay, and then like later on towards 2014 it was starting to become like the most manic, stressful place to work at. Tons of crunch time, very hostile work environment. Maybe people fed off of it, but I like was not in a good mental state at that point. When it comes to duels versus invasions, is like it's two things. It's the balance is terrible in duels, and people try to restrict all the stuff, and they create an environment that's satisfying for a few people who want to participate in that. Most of the possibilities for what the game offers are excluded at that point. A lot of how the game is balanced is like asymmetric encounters, terrain, mobs, healing, manipulating effective HP via builds and spells and stuff and equipment. All of that is lost in duels. And Twitch, yeah, Twitch was very different. I mean, it was JTV for a while. It didn't become Twitch until later. I mean, that was back when the chat, the chat for Twitch would be down, for JTV, would be down for like a week straight. There would be no chat. You would be using like either external chat or nothing, and they were very good if you were into talking to yourself, but they were very bad if they were very bad if you had a microphone and just could not hold a monologue. I will say this though, I feel it's one of two things. I think maybe either a lot of sort of my like more neurotic self back in 2011 to 2014 maybe has turned people away, especially like a lot of the like weird Souls community back in the Dark Souls 1 era especially. I think there's some people who are like big in the community who just don't bother anymore, or just never did, and those would have been people who might have been interested in raiding me or whatever. But a chunk of it as well is just like, either I'm too strange and too different from everybody else, or I rub people the wrong way in a way that I'm not able to understand. Like, here, a good example is like, I've had no luck finding like a regular group, a few people who I want to stream with and like do multiplayer stuff, you know what I mean? Part of it is because I mostly play single player games, and most of the multiplayer stuff I want to do is like super niche indie shit. But I definitely think that there is some portion of me that just rubs people the wrong way, or people don't want to associate with, or whatever. In terms of like networking, or, you know, group streams, or regular raid targets, or whatever, online multiplayer culture is just so hyper-focused on games as a service. That's true. I think there's kind of two things that online multiplayer wants to do, like very like MMO style stuff, and then very like quick kind of grindy stuff as well. So a good example would be, I fell off of Monster Hunter Worlds very quickly for two reasons. One is that, what was the name of that fight? The horrendous shit fight, the big cinematic fight that's like the first crappy one, Zora Magdaros. That fight was so broken and so shitty and so automatic that I just hated it, and the game didn't pick up afterwards. But the other thing was multiplayer related. People who play Monster Hunter don't want to kind of savor the fight and have a challenge. They just want to grind for armor and shit, get all the Rathalos rubies or whatever the current thing is now. And so what ended up happening, like, it's not a good stream game if you're not grinding as fast as everybody around you, or faster. Because what ends up happening is that, like, you're trying to figure out where the monster is, everybody knows where to look already, they're already fighting the monster, and it's dead or half dead by the time you arrive. You've done nothing. And it's not like, for example, like a fighting game, you're fighting somebody, like, if you want to fight somebody who's much better than you in like Guilty Gear or whatever, then at least you have something to show for it, right? The person's on the screen doing something cool, so your viewers have something to watch. But if it's like Monster Hunter or whatever, you show nothing. You show nothing of importance. You come up and the monster's dead, and it's like, sorry guys, I guess I suck. But people just want you to skip the content to get to the end game, I guess, before you're even ready for it, and while you haven't finished enjoying the stuff that comes before that, the beginning and the middle of the game. So that part of the multiplayer experience just wasn't good for me, even though I know a lot of people want to go in and have me like co-op with them at Monster Hunter. For games that you can rush like that and skip content, I want to play with somebody who plays at my same pace. Unfortunately, the one person who played about the same turned out to be a milkshake duck, so I'm not gonna go into that detail. I think some of the people who I was sort of backing away from, you can kind of tell we're leaning towards like the alt-right kind of stuff, and I'm just like very no on that. I was like, hell no. So some people I kind of backed away for that kind of thing. Was I friends with P the most? No. I was friends probably with Newtaf the most. Soul Brand actually did not have a lot of like direct connections between the members. Even the people who I played games with every while or so, like very little actual connection. Peeve always connected most with Brandon, and that's been that way almost since day one. Everything else is like sort of incidental acquaintances and shit. Frosty? We had a stint in Dark Souls 2 where we had worked out how defense works. Both how it works and how to do what to do with it. But I mean, like I didn't really connect too much with Frosty, and Frosty, I remember, if I remember correctly, was more into the dueling stuff as well, and that put me off. I think invaders kind of have a very loader mindset. You know, can't rely on shit. I think I'm on good, reasonable terms with Forget. I think I don't think we've ever really done anything together, but I think the times when I've watched his streams have been pleasant. We don't really communicate at all. Like I don't know how that shit doesn't work. Personally, I'm not a kind of person who reaches out for anything, and I should. I think what has happened is the people who I've reached out to have been so non-responsive that I just don't try anybody. There's many people who are just busy too. Like as much as I want to chill with Canon, and I'm sure Canon wants to find stuff to do together. I think a lot of people who I would relate to very well have life responsibilities that are just massive and taxing.